Man, I got some color the last couple of days.
Shalom.
Shalom.
This is Voice of a Watchman.
All praises.
Here on the Sabbath. We do thank and praise the Most High, Ahayah, bahashem, Yashayah, Barak. We do thank Him for this understanding and this truth that He's blessed us with for the last 5 years. I recommend you all get this book.
Give him the name.
Stealing from God by Frank Turek. Stealing from God from Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case by Frank Turek. We had a good introduction. The lesson tonight is Answering the Non-Believer, Part 1, Creation Without a Creator. We're going to give you some good ways if you ever encounter a skeptic, a atheist, or a agnostic, where you can hopefully convince them intellectually that there is indeed by necessity a creator of the world.
Please send donations to josh.lavio@gmail.com.
Of course,
thank you.
As every one of you know, we do not necessarily agree with Christianity, but I will defend the existence of the Creator with the Christian. Although we clearly disagree on fundamental issues. By the way, just to make sure, to let you know, you so-called blacks and you so-called Hispanics, you are the children of Israel according to the Bible.
That's right.
Christ was not a white man. Christ was a man of color, so-called, a black man. He was an Israelite who lived in Africa.
He was a Hebrew Israelite.
He was not Jewish.
He had nothing to do with Christianity. This was a name and a religion made up by the Roman Pope. And we're going to bring a good message. I know it's bubbling in our spirit, both of us. So we're going to clear the air. We're going to bring probably an hour and a half message on this, and we're going to show you how they use that word Christian to kill those men in those days. Okay. So just do the research. Research.
Get. 1 Peter 3:15. 1 Peter 3:15. Read.
Okay. But sanctify the Most High power in your hearts. So
we are always to keep our hearts as clean and our minds as clean as we possibly can.
We believe heart means the mind. Okay. And to be ready always.
So be ready always
to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you.
So we are always to be ready, because the Bible also tells us that in times scoffers will come saying, where is the hope of his coming? We are to give an answer, and the word answer in the Greek is apologia.
Apologetic, yeah, that's right.
Which means not to apologize for the Bible, but to give an educated, intellectual answer for why you. It's not simple just saying, well, God is because He is. That's not simple enough.
It's true. That's right, Josh.
You have to know how to answer people. You have to know how to give an intellectual, educated answer.
With meekness and fear.
So we are to answer people with meekness and respect.
Kitten gloves, that's right.
So in other words, go to Proverbs 30 verse 9. Proverbs 30 and 9. So we are always to be ready to give an answer for the hope that is within us.
Proverbs 39.
30 verse 9.
Okay.
So meaning an answer in this specific topic of what we're talking about is, how can you know for sure that God exists outside of science? Because the existence of God is not scientific. It is a philosophical question, meaning since you cannot prove scientifically that God exists or does not exist, which is a 50-50 draw, because science can't measure a supernatural being, right?
That's right.
You can't look with a telescope and find God. So right. You can't prove just because that is true doesn't mean he doesn't exist. So you can't find God. You have to believe. You have to necessary for God to exist. Verse 30, Proverbs 30 and 9.
Ready?
Uh-huh.
Lest I be full and deny thee.
So people have become full and have denied God, the Most High, right?
And say, that's right. Who is the Most High?
So people say, who is this God you talk about? Proof. How do you know he's real? There is no God.
Mm-hmm.
Read.
Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my power in vain. Stealing from God.
So, in other words, people take God's name in vain by not giving him reverence for what he created. Read verse 11.
Okay. Verse 11. There is a generation that curseth their father.
Uh-huh.
There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes.
So in this context, there is a generation that curses the Creator.
Wow.
And they are pure within their own mind.
And yet is not washed from their filthiness.
So they're not washed from their sin. And in all reality,
have no
most people that are atheists and don't believe in God simply don't believe in God because they don't want someone telling them how to live their lives.
That's right. There is a generation, oh, how lofty are their eyes.
They're proud. Read.
And their eyelids are lifted up. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives.
Always trying to tear one another down instead of building each other up.
To devour the poor from off the earth, and the needy from among men. Wow. There was a big guy in the gym today, Mary. Didn't like what I was saying to the brothers. And I met him once before, but he didn't want to talk to me after he heard. And this guy was huge. I said, you know what? I'm not going to say nothing to him. If you don't like the truth, see, to be called into a true ministry, you can't be concerned, folks out there, what they're going to think about you. Because if you do that, you are never going to be used. If you're going to walk in fear, I'm talking about every true believer that has this understanding like us. And there's millions. I know thousands and thousands listen to us, but if you're new to that, you're listening to this truth, you're going to be hated. Christ said, this true word that we have understanding now will be preached throughout the whole world now. Then the end's going to come.
Exactly.
Not that white man's gospel, which there's a lot of scriptures that they're right on, but most of them are wrong.
Right.
Okay.
So
go ahead, Josh. It's on you. Oh, you want me to read?
I'll read some and you read some.
Go ahead.
This is stealing from God. And
get the book. Every book that we get, every book that we get, you ought to buy it, because this is how we learned and grew. All right, Stealing from God.
By Frank Turret.
Okay, there you go, Josh. So all the books, matter of fact, Wednesday night we're going to show you all the new books we just got and all the ones that we have already. And you know, we're not complaining, but we're a little tired, I'm telling you, because it's a lot of love. It's a lot of labor and love, you know, sharing truth.
So
go ahead, Josh.
This is okay, chapter 1. I had just given 3 arguments for the evidence of God. One which was the cosmological argument, which claims if there is a world, the world had a beginning. There must have been a cause. It goes like this. Everything that had a beginning. Now, we always say have your pens and pads ready, and especially write this information down.
Yeah, please. You need to do that. Josh is right. Whenever you listen to us, you ever tune in with us, at least get your Bible open for sure and have a pad and pencil.
So the first point of the argument for creation is everything that had a beginning by necessity has a cause, meaning nothing comes into existence without someone creating something. Babies just don't come out of nowhere.
It's almost, I don't want to use the word ironic, Josh, but it's almost like out of place to say something that you see something built and you know it took somebody to build that.
A mechanic.
Yeah.
Something mechanical comes from a mechanic.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll read point.
Well,
the first. So.
Creator.
Oh, yeah, someone that's created.
That's right.
So everything that has a beginning has a cause.
Awesome, Josh.
The world had a beginning. Therefore, the world has a cause. So therefore, there cannot be an uncaused universe or world. Right? So this earth did not just come into existence from nothing. Now, to believe that, you really have to have blind belief to believe that, because that in itself is a miracle. Although it is a theory, they call it evolution, or not evolution, the Big Bang theory. It is just that. It's a theory. Right? It is a theory. It cannot be proven because you can't measure something that happened millennia ago. Scientifically even. I asked recently which view of reasonable, which an atheist blurted out opinion, what is more reasonable? No one created out of nothing. Opinion 1. Look at the opinion of the first 2 opinions. For two ways, 2 says that someone created nothing, someone created out of nothing. Now, this is a miracle, but at least it is a miracle worker. Someone, opinion 2. Opinion 1 is a miracle without a miracle worker. That is clearly absurd. I'll read the 2 points that he's referring to. Point number 1. No one created something out of nothing, which is the atheistic view. No one created something out of nothing. In other words, that's essentially the Big Bang. the world came out of, just blew up. And we got this incredibly ordered world we have out of an explosion of chaos or chance, which you can't get order from nothing. Logically, you cannot get an ordered world out of an explosion.
That's right. The word explosion means blown apart. The world wasn't blown apart. Genesis strictly says the earth was void.
And verse 2, opinion 2 says, somebody created something out of nothing. In other words, which is much easier and much more logical to believe, that somebody created the world by creating it, or created it out of nothing, or spoke it into existence. God said, let there be light. God said, let there be land, let there be ocean, let there be sun and stars and the moon.
So there must have been a star, or whatever you want to call the earth. It was not a planet, you know, a massive ground where he took that place and he created light, right? Water. He created everything that came upon that. So that's creation. Only the great architect can do that. Why would he make something blow up, Mary, and then create it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Tom?
No. Unless it's condemned.
Right.
Explaining nothing.
Want me to read here? I'll read you.
It is fortunate for him that he's solved an absolutely puzzling question for the atheist. That if there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing?
Awesome.
Why, if there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing? At least that is the title of his book implies, the universe, a universe or world from nothing. Why there is something rather than nothing, but the devil is in the details. What are the details? Krauss says, the cause of the universe is not God, it is nothing. So this atheist wrote a book, and he said in his book, creation came out of nothing. God did not create the earth, so therefore nothing created the earth. Nothing cannot create something, for one. So obviously that's a problem.
You know, I really believe they stumped themselves, and they know it. Because the word says, don't the word say that? Although they knew him, they glorified him not.
He cites happenings at a quantum level to dispense with the need for God. The quantum level is the world of extremely small subatomic in size. One of the things about the quantum mechanics is it's not only can nothing come from something, something always becomes something. Dr. Krauss, nothing is unstable. Nothing will always produce something in quantum mechanics. So apparently, from this person's point of view,
Go ahead, Josh.
he's pretty much trying to get the idea across that nothing produced something. So he's using science to try to say that science or the knowledge of science came from nowhere. So again, if that is true, why does he trust his science to tell him any value? Why does this individual that believes science came from nobody or knowledge came from nothing, why does he trust his knowledge to tell him the truth? Because his knowledge is apparently valueless. It's only valuable because he believes in it. So
Right there.
Krauss.
Krauss seems to think that philosophers are not talking about reality, when in fact, that's exactly what philosophy is. The study of ultimate reality. The problem for Krauss is twofold. First, reality is not merely physical stuff.
So, in other words, reality is transcendent. We live in a physical reality, but the physical reality is not all there is to life. Read.
All right. First, reality is not merely physical stuff, since nature and the laws of physics themselves have a beginning. Ultimate reality is beyond nature or supernatural.
So, the reality is a physical and immaterial. In other words, if God exists, then there is apparently a supernatural realm beyond what we can see. If God does not exist, you have no reason to trust what you think, because your mind is no more than chemicals. There is no objective truth, reason, or morals to live by. There is absolutely no reason to value anything that you believe. God does not have to exist for morals, reason, and these things to exist, but he must exist for them to have an objective value, where they actually matter.
Therefore, despite claiming to explain how the universe came from nothing, Krauss has explained nothing.
So,
and we don't believe there's a universe, right, Josh? So
yeah.
Okay. And that's research. We believe the Earth is there's a dome over the Earth. Okay. The second problem is far more serious, intellectual disease that infects the thinking of Krauss and several other prominent atheists as well.
Read.
This disease is so severe that it threatens the accuracy of the very science they seek to promote. Krauss, like Dawkins and Hawkins, is dismissive of philosophy. Now, having studied a lot of wacky philosophy myself, I sympathize with them. But the existence of wacky philosophy doesn't discredit the existence of good philosophy any more than the existence of wacky science discredits the existence of good science. While it is true that one can use bad philosophy, it is impossible to use no philosophy.
Read.
All right. In fact, and this is the essential point, Krauss, Dawkins, and the like can't do science without philosophy. While scientists are usually seeking to understand physical cause and effect, science itself is built on philosophical principles.
So, science is philosophical. It is a philosophy of knowledge. It is a philosophical point of knowledge.
Of a theory, right. Principles that are not physical themselves. They are beyond the physical, metaphysical. Those principles help the scientists make precise definitions and clear definitions, and then interpret all the relevant data rationally. What exactly is relevant? What exactly is rational? What actually is the best interpretation of the data, including what exactly is or isn't nothing. Those questions are all answered through the use of philosophy. Well, unpack this in more detail in the science chapter, but for now, the main point is that science is done more in the mind than the lab.
Yes, science is done more in your mind than in a lab. The labs just tell you what is possible. Like, for example, I can go into a lab and test out the chemicals in the mind that cause that make love, the emotion of love. I can take certain pheromones and hormones in the mind and see what makes love happen, or not get an understanding of what causes those things to happen in the mind. But that doesn't give love value. That just tells me how it happens, right?
That's
just
right.
because you can test something out doesn't mean you can put value to it. Love exists not merely because it's a physical reality. Love exists because it is a metaphysical value. It is a metaphysical trait that all of us have. All of us were given. It is metaphysical. It is beyond the physical. Love is not merely an action. It is a spiritual thing. It is hardwired into the being of people. Truth is not merely something you can test. Truth is truth. Truth exists objectively.
Well,
Read.
think about all the philosophical judgments a scientist must make throughout the scientific process of making a hypothesis, gathering data. Hypothesis, okay, gathering data, sorry, and then interpreting that data. Nature doesn't develop or evaluate hypothesis. It doesn't gather or interpret data.
So nature doesn't test itself, basically. Nature is nature. Read.
And data certainly doesn't interpret itself.
Yeah, data doesn't tell you what it is. A person tells you what it is.
Wow. The mind of the scientist does, and all that requires philosophy. Perhaps that's why the PH in PhD stands for philosophy. Wow. The originators of advanced degrees knew that philosophy is the foundation of every area of iniquity. Wow. Inquiry, right?
Inquiry.
Oh, sorry, inquiry, sorry. Yeah, inquiry. Excuse me.
Okay. If Dr. Krauss cast doubt on the laws of causality, then cast doubt on every discipline he is trying to champion. Science at the foundation of science is the law of causality. So causality is just a fancier way of saying creation or creative.
Oh, wow.
So in other words, creation is at the base of science. You cannot have science unless something is created from something. Science cannot happen from nothing, right? Like we said in the introduction, God is timeless, spaceless, immaterial. omnipotent, omnipresent, omnipotent, all immaterial, holy, all good, and all loving. So basically, at the foundation of science is the law of causality. Although the definition of and scope of science is often disputed, what cannot be disputed is science depends on the law of causality. In other words, like I just said, you cannot have something from nothing, which is the atheistic worldview. The Big Bang, which was an explosion of nothing, created something. From an explosion from nothing created something. You cannot have an earth that is so delicately balanced and tuned to where everything operates perfectly if that world came out of nothing.
That's right.
Because nothing that is perfectly fixed comes from something that is perfectly fit to work never comes out of nothing.
That's right. How could it work?
And and for though if an atheist may hear this, we're doing this to help you, try to convert you. Well, we can't convert you, but the Spirit can. And this isn't a God of the gaps. I'm not simply trying to fill in the gaps in my knowledge because I'm not willing to accept science. I'm perfectly fine with science. God created science. Well, didn't you just say God did it? Yes, for science to have a purpose, it had to be created.
Wow.
Right?
That's right.
So I'm not simply ignorant and trying to put God in the gaps of my ignorance.
Good, Josh. Good, Josh.
Because that's what a lot of you atheists will say. Well, you're just trying to put God in the gap of what you don't know because you can't accept that something created nothing or nothing created something. I can't accept that because even if I did not believe in the Bible, I could never believe in evolution. I could never believe that this earth and this earth came from nothing, because that is intellectual suicide to believe that.
Yeah. Because
then you have to pretty much defend every other philosophical point from that. Morals, you have morals from nothing, reason, logic, personhood, and you can't defend a relative anything, because relativity means it's either same or non-existent. So you have to have someone who initiated it for it to matter. I mean, if you honestly believe that something created nothing and your mind is no more than chemicals firing off, or why do you trust your mind at all to tell you the truth about anything? Because your mind, by definition, is not supposed to work. In evolution, your mind isn't supposed to even work. It's a complete chance that you can think. So your mind wasn't even created to work. God created our minds so we can reason through these hard philosophical questions to try to get through an answer. Awesome. And of course that answer has to be someone, I'm not, for your sake, someone or something, right? For your sake, if someone hears this who does not believe in God, someone or something had to make the world.
Come on.
Right?
That's right. Come on.
So, Dr. Krauss then goes even further in doubting the laws of causality. He says, what is important to note is that every physical effect whose cause is we understood had a physical cause. There is no reason, therefore, to assume the same will not be true of the universe itself.
Go ahead, George.
So he essentially just said that all things that are created have causes, right? So all creative things have causes. So if you can reason that correctly, why can't you reason that a supernatural being did it rather than a supernatural explosion that did it? Because it's harder to admit that God did it than nothing did it. Because if you admit that God did it, automatically you're responsible for your life. In the atheistic worldview, your life is pitiless and meaningless. Your life is worthless. It is no value. You have no personhood in the evolutionary worldview. You are an accident, and you're an accident waiting to go to the dirt because you don't believe in a supernatural afterlife, which means you can just do what you want anyway.
Well, it's good, Josh.
Well, if all physical things must have a physical cause, then believing in God has a problem. Since God is not a physical thing, God could not have been the cause of the physical world. So with this little bomb as of an assertion, Dr. Krauss has blown up the probability. God case closed. Not so fast. We already seen space and time and matter had a beginning, which means that the cause cannot be physical, even though that effect is thus Dr. Krauss is ignorant. A counterexample of the big as the entire universe or world.
Don't go too far, Josh. Just let me get a hold of this. Oh, you're jumping?
Just read the highlighted areas.
This is really good. I hope you're being blessed, because I am. I really am. This is really important to know. It really is, because there are so many atheists out there, and I find them in a lot of religious people have atheist questions. If an atheist wants to say that the creation of space, time, and matter doesn't need a cause, that is an effect which is an exception to the law of causality, sorry, then he has to support his claim with evidence. But any attempt to get such evidence creates a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
If the person cites scientific experiments or observations as the source for his evidence,
mm-hmm.
to point out that experiments and observations was that just PR?
Huh?
Right there.
Presuppose.
Okay, right. Presuppose cause and effect. You couldn't make those observations or draw any conclusions without the law of causality.
Uh-huh.
Likewise, any process of reasoning he uses would also use the very law of causality.
Uh-huh.
He would be denying In other words, it's self-defeating rationality, and scientifically scientifically to conclude that effects do not need causes.
So you can't scientifically explain, come to the conclusion that something can be created without a creator.
Come on. That's because any kind of the law of causality uses the law of causality. I'm saying. Again, the atheist attempts to exempt himself from his own theory. Wow. Okay. Davies wrote, all science proceeds on the assumption that nature is ordered in a rational and interchangeable way.
So
interguidable way. Sorry.
This philosopher reasoned that all nature is ordered in a way where we can understand it mentally. You cannot understand a world that came from nothing. Read.
Irrintelligible. You wouldn't be a scientist if you thought the universe was a meaningless jumble of odds and ends.
In other words, you wouldn't do science if you believe the world was meaningless.
Haphazardly juxtaposed. Davies observes that scientists take the orderly laws of physics on fate, and that those laws all are expressed as tidy mathematical relationships. Wow. This is pretty good stuff. You don't teach too much longer. Go ahead. No, I don't care how long it goes, but the viewers, I don't want the viewers to go too far with it, because if they're trying to keep up with it,
They don't understand it all.
Right, you know what? Because I'll tell you, there's even Christians that are atheists.
Many other aspects of physical reality are also incomprehensible, fine-tuned for the existence of life being world. For example, if the
You see? Put it down for you. See,
okay, there are actually three possibilities for an apparently fine-tuned universe. Chance, physical necessity, these properties of the world can be this way, or design. I do not have enough faith to believe that an extreme degrees of precision that we see happen by some unknown, unintelligent means that scientists call chance. The possibilities are too small. The world could have been different. It's out. The most reasonable conclusion is that the fine-tuning is due to a designer. We already have good evidence to believe that there is a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, personal, and powerful cause that created the world. Fine-tuning shows us that this being is also created the world, he set the just and the right for the laws of our existence. Okay, what is the bigger question? Who made God? That is the atheist trump card. No matter how much that the evidence points toward deism, you can't say God did it, because then the atheist counters that with, oh, okay, well, who made God?
Well, we all know the truth, don't we? I am that I am. But see, to just say that to an atheist,
If God exists, he is the self-existent, uncaused first cause. Since God created time, he is timeless and eternal. So, in other words, they have the idea that God is like an idol or a thing
right, okay.
that needs a cause.
Oh, okay.
If you're timeless, you do not have a beginning. Of course not. Therefore, one reason God had no cause is because he had no beginning.
Yeah.
He's the Ancient of Days. That's what the Bible teaches.
He's timeless. He was there from the beginning. He is the beginning. He's the end. He says, I'm the Alpha and the Omega.
Now,
The beginning and the end.
hold fast. I'm almost finished with this. Now, listen to this discussion between this Christian, this atheist, and this Christian. He has a little dialogue between two people, and I want to go over. Richard Dawkins says, this is a debate that is online between Richard Dawkins and John Lennox. But you haven't explained where the logos came from. Of course, logos in Greek means the word or Christ. Where did Jesus or where did Christ come from? Or in the first place? Lennox said, well, of course, because the logos didn't come from anywhere. Well, then in what sense is that an explanation? Lennox said, because when we ask who created the logos, what are we saying? Thinking of a created God. The whole point about God revealed in the Bible is he is not created. He is eternal. He is the eternal logos. And I ask myself, as an inference to the best explanation, which makes sense, that there is an eternal logos. Well, of course, Christ did exist with the Father in the beginning. Christ is not God. Christians believe that Christ is God. The Word is not the Most High. The Word is Christ, who is the Son of the Most High. Christ is not a God, or not God in the sense of, the Creator. He is not the Ancient of Days, because Christ also was part of the creation in the spirit realm. He was a created spiritual being. And that the universe, its laws, and the capacity for mathematical description are so on the derivative, including the human mind from the logos, that makes much more sense sense to me than as a scientist than if the other way around, especially when the explanation for the experience of the universe. Do you just believe the universe is a brute fact? Brian Dawkins says the universe is an easier brute fact to accept than a cosmic creator. Well, do you make that if it's you who insist on asking the question? No, you asked me who made the creator. The universe created you, Richard. Who made it then? Dawkins said, a God is a complicated entity which requires a much more and difficult explanation than the universe, which is, according to the modern physics, a very simple entity. It is very simple beginning. It is not negligible beginning, but it is very simple beginning because that it has got to be easier to explain than something as complicated as a God. So basically, he believes it's easy. This atheist believes that it is less complicated to believe that a Big Bang created everything out of nothing than God created something out of nothing. I think you may have missed my question, Lennox said. I am drawing a parallel. Go ahead. Okay, hold on. So basically,
I'm going to finish with a small scripture when you're done. Josh, don't make it that long, I said. You know, we got viewers and they want to get this.
I'm almost done.
No,
Hold
it's
on.
okay, it's okay. I got a scripture for you too at the end. It'll fit right into your message. This is really good. This is really, really acceptable. I like this. Because I've met plenty of atheists, and many times I didn't know how to answer them. But now we do.
Why do atheists find it so hard to believe that an eternal God? For centuries, atheists have had no problem believing in an eternal world. Why do they suddenly have a problem believing in God? But Dawkins and Lennox admit that atheists and theists have the problem of explaining how everything got started. Whatever got it started is eternal. That's either the world or something beyond the world, since all the evidence shows the earth had a beginning. The theists are the ones following the evidence where it leads. The atheists simply have blind faith that some other explanation will be found. The created and fine-tuned world, along with the orderly cause and effect of nature and reality, are the best explained by a intelligent being with attributes remedy coherent to the God of the Bible. Therefore, there's more evidence for this conclusion in the following chapters, but the evidence and the conclusion that are only sound if the effects have causes, if the laws of causality don't hold, it in fact can arise without cause. Then how can atheists or deists have comfortable confidence in any of their theories? As we have seen, atheists use the laws of causality in their supposed arguments against God, but when they attack in the minute an argument points to God, the beginning of the world is the beginning example of, unfortunately for them, science for them, since all the experience tells us that whatever comes to be has a cause. There is no reason to believe that the earth is an extension of an extension to similarly universal laws, that when the great skeptic David Hume, I have never asserted such an absurd proposition as what that anything might arise without a cause. At the very least, it is certain far more reasonable to believe that the universe needs a cause than it does not. In fact, exactly. So everything that is created has a cause.
That's right.
So it is only
Yeah, talk. Yeah, Josh. Before we close, I want to read a scripture to you in Ecclesiastes chapter 12.
excuse me. Read
Verse 13. It's all right. Let us hear the whole conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For Ahayah shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be bad. So how is there not a creator? If he's going to bring every secret thing into judgment, we got to stand before somebody. If you really think that you can just do what you want in this world, atheist, and not answer to no one, you've been really deceived. Right?
Uh-huh.
Hey, Josh. Bring no, again, Josh, finish. Tony, put this on my bed.
All right.
Okay.
I got it.
Him. No, go ahead, Josh. Josh, and announce, what do you call it? What do you call it? An offering again too, Josh. All right, brother? I'll be right there. I'll be right in. That was good, Josh. Hold on.
So we hope hopefully you are learning more about these worldviews. We do always give thanks and praise to the Most High, Ahayah, bahashem, Yashayah, Barak. We thank him always and praise him always for this knowledge and understanding, and we say Shalom.